What if I told you that one of the scariest monsters in The Witcher 3 isn't a bloodthirsty vampire or a towering griffin, but a vengeful spirit tied to an old, abandoned well? In the heart of White Orchard, a forsaken village hides a tale of betrayal, suffering, and restless death. Devil by the Well isn't just a contract quest, it's a chilling retelling of an age-old legend. But did you know that this spectral figure, the Noonwraith, has deep roots in real Slavic folklore? The idea of restless spirits haunting the living isn't new. Across medieval Europe, ghost stories weren't just for entertainment, they were warnings. People believed that those who died tragically without proper burial rites or in the heat of passion could never truly rest. One such entity is the Noonwraith, or as Slavic mythology calls her, Poludnitsa, the Lady Midday. According to legend, she appears in the scorching summer heat, punishing those who dare to labor under the burning sun. Some say she asks riddles, and if answered incorrectly, she slashes her victim with a sickle or drags them into the underworld.
An object, something she needs before.
In The Witcher 3, Geralt takes on a contract to hunt the Devil by the Well, a wraith that haunts a forgotten village. But this isn't just a random ghost. Her story is one of loss, betrayal, and dark folklore. A tale so eerily similar to real-world legends that it makes you wonder how much of The Witcher is just fiction and how much is history repeating itself. Join me as we dive into the true history of wraiths like the Noonwraith, exploring their medieval origins, their presence in Slavic mythology, and how The Witcher 3 brings these age-old terrors to life. White Orchard already suffers from the war. Furthermore, on its outskirts, a forgotten village holds a chilling secret. The well at its center is cursed, haunted by a spirit known only as the Devil by the Well. The locals whisper of a ghostly woman who appears at midday, howling in sorrow and lashing out at any who come near.
Greetings, good man.
Odolin, a desperate villager, pleads for help. His daughter is sick, and the only clean water source is this haunted well. But this isn't just a simple haunting. This is the work of a Noonwraith, a tortured spirit bound to the world of the living.
Strange, no sign of a ghost.
Using his Witcher senses, Geralt pieces together the tragic past of this village. Scorched earth, the remains of a burned dog, and an eerie silence hint at a terrible fate. A closer look at the nearby hut reveals a journal, a final message from the woman who once lived here. Her name was Claire. She was betrothed to a man named Volker, who gifted her an ornate bracelet. But before their wedding, something terrible happened. She was murdered, her body cast into the well, bound in death to the very place she once called home.
A corpse.
In Slavic folklore, spirits who die violently or suffer great betrayal often return as vengeful wraiths. The Noonwraith, or Poludnitsa, is said to be the soul of a woman who perished tragically, often before her wedding. She wanders the land, luring victims with an illusion of beauty before revealing her decayed skeletal form. But this connection between marriage and agriculture in such legends is no coincidence. In many ancient societies, both fertility in marriage and bountiful harvests were seen as the foundation of survival. Marriage and childbirth symbolized productivity, just as agriculture sustained life. The Noonwraith embodies both, the guardian of crops and a tragic bride taken before her time. In the past, when populations were sparse, marriage was of paramount importance. After all, a strong workforce was essential for tending the fields and ensuring survival. The myth of the Noonwraith is deeply rooted in agrarian traditions. These spirits were both feared and respected, seen as omens of disaster, punishing those who worked under the scorching midday sun. But unlike legend, this wraith is no mere warning. It's a soul crying out for vengeance.
And the bracelet. Igni.
To set her free, Geralt must break the curse. Burning the remains should sever the ties between spirit and world, But the Noonwraith will not leave without a fight. Noonwraiths are deadly adversaries. Unlike common ghosts, they exist in two planes at once, making them nearly invulnerable. To land a strike, Geralt must trap her in a magical Erden sign, forcing her into corporeal form. In medieval Europe, exorcisms and ritual burnings were common ways to rid a village of a restless ghost. Superstitions held that a vengeful spirit must be laid to rest by addressing its unfinished business, something The Witcher 3 beautifully adapts into gameplay.
She's gone. For good.
With the spirit defeated, the curse is lifted. Odolin can now draw water from the well without fear, and his daughter may yet recover. But what of Claire? Did she find peace, or is she merely waiting for another lost soul to take her place?
Job done. The well was haunted by the ghost of a woman who was killed there.
The Witcher 3 doesn't just offer monster contracts, it revives forgotten legends. The story of the Noonwraith reminds us that behind every ghost, there is a tragedy, and that some spirits may never rest. The Noonwraith, or Poludnitsa, isn't just another enemy in The Witcher 3. She's a legend, an ancient Slavic spirit feared for centuries. Unlike other wraiths who haunt the night, the Noonwraith strikes at the brightest part of the day. In Slavic mythology, the Poludnitsa was the spirit of a woman who died tragically, often a bride-to-be who never reached her wedding day. She wandered fields at noon, punishing those who worked under the scorching sun. Some believed she was a guardian of crops, protecting fields from those who disrespected them, while others saw her as a bringer of heatstroke and madness. CD Projekt Red adapted this folklore into The Witcher 3, blending the Poludnitsa legend with the tragic theme of spirits bound to the places of their death. In the game, Noonwraiths aren't just random ghosts. They are the tortured souls of women betrayed or murdered, their rage keeping them tethered to the land of the living. The game captures many elements of real folklore, Noonwraiths appearing only in broad daylight, their ability to vanish into dust, and their connection to fields and rural life. But there's one key difference. In folklore, the Poludnitsa rarely killed directly. Instead, she asked riddles, and if answered incorrectly, she would either cut off a person's head with her sickle or cause heatstroke. In contrast, The Witcher 3's Noonwraiths are relentless killers, attacking anyone who disturbs them. This shift from trickster spirit to vengeful ghost makes the game's version even more terrifying. The legend of the Noonwraith isn't unique to Slavic mythology. Around the world, similar spirits haunt the living, bound by sorrow and unfinished business. In Irish folklore, the banshee is a spirit that wails when death is near. She doesn't kill, but her cry is an omen of tragedy. Like the Noonwraith, she is often depicted as a woman in white, forever mourning. In Mexico, there's La Llorona, the weeping woman. Her story tells of a mother who drowned her children in a jealous rage and was cursed to wander riversides, crying for eternity. She is said to lure victims to their doom, just as Poludnitsa was believed to trick field workers into their deaths. Even in Western Europe, tales of white ladies, spirits of betrayed women, persist. From castle ruins to darkened roadsides, they appear, warning travelers or seeking vengeance. Whether she's a wailing banshee, a weeping woman, or a vengeful wraith, one thing remains constant. These spirits are cautionary tales, warnings passed down through generations. And in The Witcher 3, the legend of the Noonwraith ensures that we never forget the consequences of betrayal and unfulfilled promises. In the medieval world, ghosts weren't just horror stories, they were warnings. Unlike today, where ghosts are often seen as fictional entertainment, medieval people truly believed that spirits walked among them. But what were these apparitions, and why did they appear? Many medieval ghost stories followed a pattern, a restless soul appearing to the living, begging for help. Often, these spirits had unfinished business. Perhaps they had been murdered, buried improperly, or denied religious rites. But as you can see, the real purpose of such tales was to reinforce societal norms. Step outside the rules, and according to these stories, something terrible is bound to happen. Classic tactic. But interpretations of ghosts varied. The Christian church viewed most spirits as souls trapped in purgatory, needing prayers from the living to move on. Many ghost stories were actually moral lessons, warnings against sin, or reminders to follow church teachings. By contrast, pagan traditions saw ghosts differently. In Norse and Celtic folklore, spirits of the dead could return for many reasons, sometimes as protectors, sometimes as vengeful entities. Many European cultures believed in the Wild Hunt, a spectral procession of ghosts and demons sweeping through the night sky. Medieval chroniclers didn't just tell ghost stories, they documented hauntings as real events. One of the most famous cases comes from the historian William of Newburgh, who wrote about a corpse that refused to stay buried. These were not just cautionary tales. Many believed ghosts could be physically dangerous, attacking the living. Icelandic sagas describe revenants, walking corpses who had to be beheaded or burned to prevent further hauntings. In some cases, people even put ghosts on trial. Eyrbyggja Saga, a Norse text, describes a case where ghosts were legally sentenced and exiled from a village, much like criminals. The belief in ghosts was so strong that elaborate exorcisms and rituals developed to lay a ghost to rest. And in many ways, these superstitions live on today in our haunted house stories, urban legends, and yes, even in video games like The Witcher 3. CD Projekt Red is known for its deep respect for folklore, and The Witcher 3 is filled with monsters inspired by real myths. The Noonwraith is no exception. Its origins in Slavic folklore are faithfully adapted from the Poludnitsa, or Lady Midday, a spirit that haunted the fields and punished those who disrespected her time of rest. Just like in Slavic legends, the game's Noonwraith is the spirit of a woman who died tragically, bound to a location where she suffered. Her connection to agriculture. Remember, marriage and agriculture linked in the Middle Ages because of the need for population to product, and the midday sun is a direct reference to real superstitions, where Poludnitsa was seen as a protector of crops, but also a dangerous force if angered. Even her weakness to magic circles reflects real beliefs. In medieval Europe, people believed spirits could be trapped within protective symbols. Ritual circles, salt lines, and exorcisms were common ways to deal with restless ghosts, just as Geralt must use Erden to weaken the Noonwraith in battle. While The Witcher 3 stays true to Slavic mythology, it also takes creative liberties. The biggest change? In folklore, Poludnitsa wasn't a vengeful ghost. She was more of a trickster, punishing people with riddles and heat stroke rather than violent attacks. Instead of the riddle-based punishment of the original myth, The Witcher 3 turns the Noonwraith into an aggressive combat encounter. It makes for a more dramatic battle, but loses some of the folklore's nuance. And finally, there's her design. The real Poludnitsa was often imagined as a woman dressed in white, appearing as either young or old. In The Witcher 3, she is depicted as a rotting corpse, closer to a classic ghost than the more mysterious figure of Slavic tradition. So, did The Witcher 3 get it right? On a scale from historically accurate to pure fantasy, the Noonwraith lands somewhere in the middle. CD Projekt Red does an excellent job capturing the core myth, from her tragic backstory to her midday hauntings. But to fit the game's structure, they made her more aggressive and visually terrifying, adding elements that aren't present in traditional folklore. At the end of the day, The Witcher 3 doesn't just tell great stories, it preserves and reimagines folklore for a modern audience. And with the legend of the Noonwraith now living on in one of the most celebrated RPGs of all time, it proves that sometimes ghost stories never die. We've explored the eerie origins of the Noonwraith, uncovered the medieval beliefs that shaped ghost stories, and compared The Witcher 3's adaptation to real folklore. So, thank you for watching. Remember, don't forget your comments, subscribe, and like are even better. Have a good day.